All right, Rebecca, here you go. Here's a video that I've been telling you about where, I'll record myself yanking some plants out of a sand bed that's been established for quite a while to show you just exactly what kind of stuff is down in there. Hopefully put some people at ease about the misconception that, a sand bed becomes like this breeding ground for really toxic stuff that will kill your fish. And there's just a whole lot of people out there that are afraid to get sand because they're afraid that it requires more maintenance than gravel, things like that. It's harder to clean than gravel, stuff that. But anyways, it really just comes down to what's in the sand that makes it dangerous. Obviously, if you have some animals that like to burrow in the sand, if you have like some loaches or something that dig themselves down in there, something organic that dies and it's not removed from the tank, obviously you're going to have an issue. You're going to have some really bad gases, from decomposition and everything occurring underneath the soil. But for the most part, as long as you practice good husbandry in a tank, you shouldn't ever really have any problems. Now, this tank, you'll have to forgive all the stuff floating around in the water. I just finished scraping some of the algae off the glass. I'm going to be doing a water change here, but this is my 90 gallon, and I am going to be removing all the dwarf sage that's here in the bottom. I just have, tried to get something going on with it for quite a while now. And I just can't seem to get a nice, pretty looking carpet going with it. As you can see, it's got all this green spot algae and everything that grows on it, and it just hasn't looked good. My wife has been bugging me to get rid of it and stuff like that. So I figured, I'll yank it out tonight. Maybe try to grow it in another smaller tank, see if I can have some better results with some brighter lighting and a little bit more care towards it, as opposed to just being in the bottom of a really large tank. This is a 90-gallon tank, and so I don't really like to dive down deep in here very often, just because it's so tall. I have to get my armpits wet pretty much to reach in here. But I figured, hey, I'm going to pull this stuff out. This would be a great opportunity to show Rebecca, since I've been telling her a couple times now that I'd make this video for her. So enough with the boring introduction. Let's start ripping some stuff out here, and let's see, all the giant bubbles of toxic, oh, I'm having, was it hydrogen sulfide? No, what's the I'm having a brain fart here. I can't remember the name of that stuff that everyone's afraid is building up in their sand beds. But anyways, I'll rip some of this stuff out. I'm not going to be gentle about it. I want you to see, just, how really there's nothing in there. There's a little bit of fine fish mulm that is accumulated. I don't really mess with the substrate too much in my tanks, just because I like to have that fish waste go down into the sand so that it helps fertilize all the plants in here. When I'm done with the video, I'll pick up, I'll give you a little tour of the tank, just kind of show you what's going on. But so anyways, let's get to it. Hopefully some of these guys will get out of the way once I start ripping in there, but if not, I'm not really concerned about it, because like I said, there's not going to be any awful toxic gases or anything like that come out of here. So let's get started here. Come on, guys. Watch out. Watch out. So here, let me just... I already started to pull some of these out, and then I remembered, oh, let's make the video. Okay, and now, I mean, we could agree that that's, that's pretty deep in there. If there was something deep down in the substrate, it'd obviously come up when this is pulled out. I just kind of show you. I'll dig all the way in here. Look at that. They say, oh, poke your sand. Make sure you stir it up to make sure that no gases are building up in there. Well, as you can see, I'm hitting bottom here, stirring it up pretty good. all that's there is that really fine, you know, fish malm from the last, I don't know, year and a half or so of fish waste accumulating in this corner. This is kind of a dead spot in the tank. I try to put some circulation pumps over here to keep all this crap from just, you know, accumulating here on the surface of the substrate. But you know, whenever I try to put a pump down there, get some more water flow, it always seems to just blow the sand everywhere. Digs out big ruts in the sand and everything like that. So I figured, now I'll just leave it be, you know, hit it up with a vacuum when I'm doing my water changes. Okay, so you can see I've kind of cleared out a pretty good section of this already. No toxic gases, and I know you're kind of just going on my word here, but I have not disturbed this in at least a year. You know, I have no idea how long ago really it was that I got these plants in here, but that was the last time that I even bothered messing with the tank in terms of messing with the substrate. But you know, so going pretty good here. I mean, this is a 90 gallon, so we're probably looking at like a good foot here so far, maybe 6 inches back. Nothing. You do not need to worry about having the sand bed for those of you who are concerned about it and are sticking with gravel. Okay, so at this point I wanted to just take an opportunity here to demonstrate, you know, how you can clean sandy substrates. You know, one of the things that we constantly see, you know, people that aren't familiar with sand ask is, you know, how do you clean sand? Is it difficult? Is it hard? Is it easier than gravel? You know, just how exactly do you do it? And honestly, you know, most people they talk to that are familiar with using sand in their tanks, they love sand. You know, almost every single one of them will tell you that sand is so much easier to maintain than gravel. And the reason for that is because unlike gravel that has large, irregularly shaped grains that allow lots of space for debris to fall down into and pack in deep into the substrate, sand is made of very small grains that are pretty uniform in shape and size, and so this allows it to compact and form a nice barrier against any kind of waste. You know, usually if you have plants or anything like that, all those little bits and pieces that you see floating around will just settle gently on the surface of the sand for you to go by and suck up easily with your siphon when you're cleaning your tank. Now in this clip I'm attacking the sand fairly aggressively, and that's just to show you, you know, you don't have to be afraid of sand. You can throw sand around, it's not going to hurt anything. It falls right back down. It's not going to get up there in your filter unless, you know, you're holding your filter intake right over it. And it's really a pleasant substrate to deal with. Okay, and here we are, just going through continuing to drain the tank. There's my nice giant Sun circulation pump. I like to have that going while I'm draining my tanks. That way it kind of keeps all those little particles suspended in the water column so that they can get sucked up by that siphon tube right there. I got my little cover over there to keep the fish from getting sucked in. That way I can kind of walk away from the tank without having them get sucked up. Something I learned a long time ago with one of my first water changes was fish will get up that tube if you're not careful. They see little things going up there and they think it's food, and so they'll chase it right up and not even realize what's going on. Right, water's getting lower. Just love the power of that Sun, man. Super strong, super cheap. Love it. Alright, so now water's getting even lower. circulation pumps turned off, things are a little bit calmer. Just doing some last minute tidying up here. Love that 24-inch algae scraper I got off Amazon, man. That thing is awesome. It's got a razor blade on it. The algae just comes off effortlessly. Super long, adjustable. Even with this 24-inch tall tank, I don't even get my hands wet when I have to clean it unless I'm dumb and drop the scraper in there and have to go fishing it out. And I've had tanks with several dozen species of plants in them. This one I really wanted to kind of keep simplistic. Obviously there's a lot of plants in there, but they're pretty much just some crypts, some high grows, a couple of Anubias plants, and that Java fern you see there in the front. And this is my safe. This is my water conditioner dechlorinator. I used to use Prime for the longest time, but then when I started getting larger tanks, I just couldn't justify, spending all that money on Prime when you could get a bottle of Safe, which is just a dry concentrated version of Prime for a fraction of the price. That jar right there, I believe, cost me $12 off Amazon, and that will last me years. I'm not kidding you, like 10 years. I tried doing the math one time, and the dosage is so small for such a large volume of water that, it'll take you literally years of doing water changes every week before you ever have to get a new bottle of that stuff. Alright, so what I'm doing here is, I know not many people do this. I never heard of anyone else doing this. It's just something that I started doing within the last couple of years. When I fill up my tanks, I like to pinch off the valve on the Python to where it produces these really fine misty bubbles throughout the tank. And the reason why I do this is because I was always unsatisfied, with my water changes. The substrate would be clean and everything, but then I'd always have all these little itty bitty bits and pieces of debris and everything floating around. It used to irritate me so much. I would do like 2 or 3 water changes just because I try to suck all that stuff out of the water column, which was near impossible. So I noticed that when I did this, I did it, just because I was playing around with bubbles one night, but I noticed that one of the nice things is that those bubbles, they attach to everything. You obviously saw how they were sticking to the fish, and you can see them here on the edges of the leaves. And now one of the benefits of that is that they stick to all those little bits of roots and debris and fish waste and everything that you saw floating around in the tank earlier. Those bubbles stick to those, and they pull them up to the surface, and then the surface tension of the water keeps those particles held up there. And now I'll zoom in here in a second. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'll get right up on the surface, and you'll be able to see all that crud that's just been stripped from the water column and brought up to the surface by all these bubbles. And look at all that. All that is just, crud that is normally floating around, swirling around freely in the water column, and I, didn't have to do anything here. This was effortless. It brought them all up to the surface, and then I can just sit there and skim it off using my siphon. Super, super easy. Now you'll see that leaf there to the left, that's actually hooked onto a skimmer that's built into the intake for one of my canister filters, and you'll see that in action here in a second. So I don't really have to do this, but I wanted to use this as an opportunity to show you how you can do this in your other tanks, if regardless if you have a skimmer on one of your filters or not. If you don't have a skimmer, then you can just use your Python, your vacuum. You can even use a net if you wanted to. I've used all them. Alright, and finally there's the canister skimmer doing its job, going through and sucking all those little pieces off the water. I usually have that thing going for the first night or two after I mess around in a tank, and usually in a day or so, all the debris that you see on the surface there, that'll be completely gone. It does a great job cleaning all that stuff up. Very simplistic design. I wasn't even sure how that worked when I first got it. I actually had to get online to figure out how to get that thing to work. But yeah, there you go. hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope it wasn't too boring. Thanks.